Picture this, a judge sitting high on the bench, smirking as he laughs at a woman standing before him. Everyone in the courtroom thinks it's just another day, another case, another person being brushed off. But here's the twist, that woman isn't just anyone. She's about to reveal she holds one of the most powerful positions in the entire country. And when the truth drops, the whole room changes in an instant. Now, you might be thinking, come on, how could a judge not know who he's talking to? That's exactly why this story is so wild. Because what happened next wasn't just embarrassing for him, it exposed something much bigger about respect, bias, and the way authority is perceived. And trust me, once you see how this unfolds, you'll never look at a courtroom the same way again. Let's dive in. The judge leaned back, smirked, and let out a laugh. Not the kind of laugh you share with friends, but the kind that slices through the air, the kind that says, "You don't belong here." His voice echoed across the courtroom, and suddenly, people shifted in their seats. Some smirked, others leaned forward, waiting for her to crumble. But she didn't. Her chin lifted just slightly, defiant, her eyes locked on his, unshaken. Her silence carried more weight than his laughter. What no one realized in that moment was that the woman standing there wasn't just another defendant or attorney. She carried a truth rooted in the highest authority of the law, a truth that would shatter his arrogance in seconds. And when she spoke, the courtroom would never be the same again. So who was this woman the judge thought he could laugh at? Her name was Angela Carter. And her story didn't start in a courtroom, it started in a small town where ambition was bigger than opportunity. She was the kind of student who stayed up late with law books stacked higher than her head, chasing a dream most people told her was impossible. Angela wasn't just smart, she was relentless. She graduated top of her class, earned respect in every courtroom she stepped into, and built a reputation for dismantling arguments with precision. Colleagues described her as the attorney who never blinked, the one who could turn silence into strategy. Every step of her journey carved out a path toward something greater. And here's the part that makes this moment even more unbelievable. Angela wasn't just another lawyer fighting for recognition. She had already climbed to the highest seat in the land, a justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. Yet on this day, standing in front of Judge Reynolds, she wasn't wearing her robe, and she wasn't announced with titles. She was just Angela. And that's exactly why he underestimated her. The irony? The very person he mocked was someone who had helped shape the laws he was quoting. But in that instant, he didn't see a justice. He saw someone he thought he could dismiss. And that mistake was about to cost him everything. Judge Reynolds wasn't new to this kind of behavior. In fact, his reputation stretched far beyond this single courtroom. Lawyers whispered about him in hallways, warning newcomers to brace themselves for his sarcasm. He was known for cutting people off mid-sentence, rolling his eyes at arguments he didn't like, and turning hearings into performances where he was the star. There were stories, attorneys who walked out humiliated, defendants who felt mocked instead of heard. Some even joked that stepping into his courtroom was less about justice and more about surviving his sharp tongue. And while most people shrugged it off as just his style, Angela saw it differently. She knew arrogance in a courtroom wasn't harmless. It shaped outcomes, it silenced voices, and it reinforced the idea that power belonged only to the man behind the bench. That's why his laugh that day wasn't random. It was the latest in a long line of dismissive gestures. But what Judge Reynolds didn't realize was that this time, his target wasn't someone who would shrink under pressure. This time, his arrogance had collided with a woman who carried authority far beyond his own. And the stage was set for his downfall. Judge Reynolds leaned forward, his tone dripping with condescension. "Do you even understand how this process works?" he asked, his words carrying the weight of mockery more than inquiry. The courtroom shifted, a few smirks, a couple of raised eyebrows, everyone waiting to see her falter. Angela didn't move. Her chin lifted, her gaze steady. "Better than most, Your Honor," she replied, her voice calm, deliberate. No hesitation, no stumble. Just a quiet confidence that made the room pause. The judge scoffed, waving his hand dismissively, as if brushing away her presence. "This isn't a place for theatrics," he added, his smirk widening. But Angela wasn't performing. She was holding ground. Every word she spoke was measured, every silence intentional. And while the judge thought he was in control, the balance of power was already shifting. The gallery leaned in, sensing something different. This wasn't the usual back and forth. This was a collision between arrogance and authority, and the tension was climbing with every exchange. What Judge Reynolds didn't know was that Angela wasn't just answering his questions. She was setting the stage. Each calm reply was a step closer to the moment that would dismantle his smug certainty. And in seconds, the courtroom would witness a reversal no one saw coming. Angela reached into her bag, her movements slow, deliberate. The judge leaned back, still wearing that smug grin, certain he had the upper hand. But then, she placed a leather folder on the bench. The room went quiet. She opened it, slid out a document, and with steady hands, laid her credentials in front of him. "I am Justice Angela Carter," she said, her voice firm but calm. "Supreme Court of the United States." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. For a moment, the judge froze, his smirk collapsing into disbelief. The gallery gasped, some mouths fell open, others exchanged stunned glances. The very person he had mocked wasn't just another attorney or witness. She was one of the highest legal authorities in the nation. Angela didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her presence alone shifted the atmosphere. The judge's arrogance evaporated, replaced by silence so heavy it felt like the walls themselves were listening. And in that silence, everyone understood, the balance of power had just flipped, and the man who laughed was now the one being judged. Angela's calm reveal in that courtroom didn't come out of nowhere. It was the product of a lifetime of battles fought long before she ever stood in front of Judge Reynolds. She grew up in a small town where opportunities for young black women in law were almost non-existent. Teachers told her to aim lower, classmates doubted her, and mentors often overlooked her. But Angela refused to shrink. Every no she heard became fuel for the next step forward. In college, she was the student who stayed behind after lectures, asking questions professors didn't expect. In law school, she was the one who turned late nights into victories, poring over case studies until she could dismantle them with precision. She didn't just want to pass exams, she wanted to master the system that so often worked against people like her. The statistics were stacked against her. Only a fraction of lawyers in America are black women, and fewer still ever rise to positions of real influence. Angela knew those numbers. She carried them like a challenge. Every courtroom she entered, every case she argued, was another chance to prove that the odds didn't define her. And slowly, step by step, she built a reputation as the attorney who never backed down, the one who could turn silence into strategy. Her climb was relentless. From local cases to federal appeals, she rose through the ranks until she reached the pinnacle, appointment to the Supreme Court of the United States. It was a moment that shattered barriers, not just for her, but for every young woman watching who had been told she couldn't. And that's what made Judge Reynolds's laugh so ironic. The very person he dismissed was someone who had helped shape the very laws he claimed to uphold. Angela's journey wasn't just about personal triumph. It was about rewriting the narrative of who belongs in power. And in that courtroom, her presence carried the weight of every struggle, every victory, every moment she refused to be underestimated. Angela's clash with Judge Reynolds wasn't just about one man's arrogance. It was a reflection of something bigger, a system where bias often hides in plain sight. Courtrooms are supposed to be places of fairness, but research shows they're not immune to prejudice. Studies have found that female attorneys are interrupted more often than their male counterparts, and for black women, those interruptions and dismissals happen at an even higher rate. Think about it, when a judge laughs at someone, it isn't just a moment of disrespect. It signals to everyone in that room who holds the power and who doesn't. And those signals shape outcomes. A Yale Law Review study highlighted how gender bias in courtrooms influences credibility. Women's arguments are more likely to be brushed aside, even when they're legally sound. Add race into the equation, and the imbalance becomes even sharper. Angela knew this reality well. She had lived it in classrooms, in firms, and in hearings where her words were questioned more than her male colleagues. That's why her silence in the face of Judge Reynolds's laugh wasn't weakness. It was strategy. She understood that every second of composure was a counter to centuries of dismissal. Her calmness wasn't just personal strength, it was a direct challenge to a system that often underestimates women like her. And that's what made her reveal so powerful. It wasn't just about shocking one judge. It was about exposing the cracks in a system that still struggles with bias, reminding everyone that authority isn't defined by stereotypes, but by knowledge, resilience, and earned respect. The silence after Angela's reveal was suffocating. Judge Reynolds, who moments earlier had been smirking with confidence, now sat frozen. His eyes darted to the credentials on the bench, then back to Angela, as if searching for a way to undo what had just happened. But there was no undoing it. The authority he thought he owned had been stripped away in an instant. Angela didn't gloat. She didn't raise her voice or demand an apology. Instead, she spoke with the same calmness that had carried her through every obstacle in her career. Respect is not given by titles, she said evenly. It's earned by actions. Her words landed heavier than any reprimand could. The judge lowered his gaze, his arrogance dissolving into silence. The gallery, stunned moments before, now buzzed with whispers. Reporters who had been sitting quietly scribbled furiously, knowing they had just witnessed a story that would ripple far beyond this courtroom. Within hours, headlines spread, Supreme Court Justice humiliates arrogant judge. Social media lit up with clips and commentary, turning Angela's composure into a symbol of strength and dignity. For Judge Reynolds, the fallout was immediate. His reputation, already shaky, now carried the weight of public embarrassment. For Angela, the moment wasn't about revenge. It was about showing that authority doesn't need theatrics, it needs integrity. And in that courtroom, she had reminded everyone of exactly what that looks like. Angela's moment in that courtroom didn't stay contained within four walls. It spread, first through whispers, then through headlines, and finally across the nation. What began as a single laugh turned into a conversation about respect, authority, and the way bias still lingers in places meant to uphold justice. Commentators on television debated the incident, pointing out how rare it was to see a Supreme Court justice confronted in such a raw, unfiltered way. Social media amplified the story, with clips of Angela's calm reveal circulating everywhere. For many, she became a symbol, proof that dignity can dismantle arrogance, and that representation at the highest levels matters more than ever. The impact wasn't just about one judge being humbled. It was about the broader lesson, that authority isn't defined by appearances, assumptions, or stereotypes. It's defined by knowledge, resilience, and earned respect. Angela's presence reminded people that bias doesn't vanish just because someone holds a title, it has to be challenged, moment by moment, until the system itself changes. And for young women watching, especially those who had been told they didn't belong in law, Angela's story became something bigger than a headline. It became a roadmap. A reminder that even in rooms where laughter tries to silence you, composure and truth can shift the balance of power. One laugh. That's all it took to expose arrogance in its purest form. But one reveal, calm, deliberate, undeniable, was enough to flip the entire room. Angela Carter didn't need to shout, didn't need to demand respect. She embodied it. And in doing so, she reminded everyone watching that true authority isn't about titles or robes. It's about integrity, resilience, and the courage to stand steady when others try to diminish you. Judge Reynolds walked away from that day with a lesson he'll never forget. But the bigger lesson wasn't his alone. It was ours. How often do we underestimate someone before knowing their story? How often do we let bias shape our perception of power? Angela's moment forces us to look in the mirror and ask, are we listening, or are we laughing? Because here's the truth, respect isn't optional. It's the foundation of justice, of leadership, of humanity itself. And when it's denied, it takes someone like Angela to remind us what it really looks like. The judge laughed. The justice revealed. And the courtroom learned a lesson that echoes far beyond those walls. So as you walk away from this story, carry that question with you, in your own life, when arrogance tries to silence dignity, which side of the room will you stand on?